So you know I went apple picking over the weekend, and I have all these apples in my refrigerator right now. And I thought, I'm not gonna go kind of the normal route. I'm not gonna go apple pie. I'm gonna go apple Pop-Tarts. And I have this amazing recipe. The crust is super, super flaky. And then I made this coffee brown butter drizzle up on top, and I sprinkled it with a little bit of sea salt. It's all you need for breakfast. So let's get to the kitchen and let's start cooking.
Okay, so I started off adding a cup of sugar and then some other ingredients like sugar, a little bit of salt, and then a tad bit of cinnamon. You want to just mix everything together just to make sure that everything is nice and homogenized. And then the next trick is one that I advocate all the time, and that is grating your butter instead of, kind of using a pastry cutter and cutting it in. It is so much easier this way, and you can, the more frozen the butter, the better. And it's really good for those of you also without a food processor, because it kind of does the same thing. And you want to keep everything in the freezer while you do this. So the next step is that I'm mixing an egg yolk with a little bit of milk, and I'm just whisking all of that together, and I'm using a fork to make sure that all of the butter is nicely coated in flour before I add in all of the wet ingredients. And I like to start off with a fork first because I want to try to minimize the amount of time that my hand has with the butter so that not everything melts in one big blob and I get nice and flaky pastry. And you might have to add a little bit more milk depending on how wet or dry your dough is. Just shaping it into a rectangle before wrapping it up and letting it rest into the refrigerator for about an hour. And then while that happens, you want to start peeling your apple. And the way that I do it is I kind of cut both of the round sides and then cut the flat sides. And then from there, I try to make uniformed kind of 1/4-inch slices so all of the apples will bake evenly. And then I add some flavoring agents like sugar, and this is one where you might want to taste it as well because some apples are sweeter than others. And then I add in some cinnamon and then also a lemon that I put in the microwave before I squeezed out because that lets it release more juices. Add a little bit of salt to that, and then kind of mix it around a little bit, making sure that all of it is coated. Next, you want to put it into a pot and then over medium heat cook the apples for about, I would say about 5 minutes or so, just to let it reduce its juices and then to have those juices condense a bit so that it's not as wet going into the Pop-Tarts. And then while that mixture is cooling, you want to roll out your dough, and I find that the best way to deal with kind of harder dough is to just kind of smush it first. And then this is me brushing off the excess flour, so there's not too much. Next, I'm measuring out my rectangle to about a 10.5 inch by 9 inch big rectangle, and I'm using a ruler to cut them into individual rectangles that are about 3.5 inches by 4.5 inches, but you guys can certainly, cut it into the sizes that you want. Next, I picked the kind of the better looking squares to be up on top, and then I used a fork to put little kind of air pocket holes in it. And then this is me going fast forward, putting in all of the apples, and they certainly don't have to be that neat. And you can put in all of the juices over the top afterwards. Next, I'm just making a little mixture of egg wash with eggs and milk just to seal the edges, and then later for an egg wash. And then this is me putting on the tops, and the dough is actually quite forgiving and it stretches a lot over the actual apple, so you don't have to worry about tearing the dough or anything else, but do make sure that everything is nice and sealed here. Next, I'm going to use a fork and put those classic tine marks that you see around Pop-Tarts onto just the edges, and that'll seal them up some more. Next, I'm going to use that same egg wash and brush it over all of the tarts just to ensure a really pretty golden brown color when it gets out of the oven. And these go into the oven 375, 18 to 20 minutes. And then while that's baking, we're going to work on our brown butter coffee drizzle. And I'm starting off melting or browning about a tablespoon of brown butter. And then I'm going to be mixing that to a little bit of powdered sugar and half a packet of coffee granules. So I'm just mixing that all together. It might be a good idea to kind of melt the coffee in a little bit of hot water or milk beforehand. This is something that I found out a little later, but wanted to share it with you guys. And I just added a little bit of milk just to thin everything out, and I whisked that together until smooth. I also added a little bit of sea salt towards the end, just because I think salt really balances and brings out the sweet flavors. And then, oh my gosh, while I was mixing that, the Pop-Tarts came out of the oven and they looked so good. Nice and golden brown. So I was really happy with that. So I ended up putting the glaze inside a Ziploc bag, and that was what I was going to use to drizzle it all over my yummy Pop-Tarts. So just kind of crisscrossing, and oh my gosh, the sauce smelled amazing and was the perfect accompaniment to the tart apples. Oh my gosh, how good does that look? And it smells amazing. And before I serve them, I also kind of sprinkle a little bit of sea salt over them, just for the exact same reason. I think it balances out everything. And this is me digging into it, and oh my gosh, if you guys could see just how flaky the crust is. I don't like a thick crust, or too thick of a crust on my pastries, but every bit of it was crumbly and flaky, and it was just amazing. And I wanted to kind of get a shot, or a tighter shot of that, so that you guys could see the apples. Oh, it was so good. So there you have it, guys. My apple Pop-Tarts from the apples that I picked over the weekend. Definitely like or subscribe if you guys want to see more of these, and thank you so much for watching.